There's a strange phenomenon that happens in the human brain during ordinary conversations that determines whether someone will remember you 10 minutes later or 10 years later. Scientists who study memory formation have discovered something fascinating. Your brain doesn't record conversations like a video camera. Instead, it takes emotional snapshots. And if there's no emotion attached to the moment, your brain treats that interaction like digital clutter and deletes it almost immediately. This is why you can meet someone at a party, have a perfectly pleasant 5-minute chat, and then completely forget their face by the time you reach your car. Nothing went wrong. Your brain simply decided that conversation carried no survival value, no emotional weight, and no reason to waste precious mental storage space. Now, here's what makes this relevant to you. Every single day, the women you're interested in are having dozens of these forgettable interactions. Coworkers making small talk by the coffee machine, guys in her messages asking how her weekend was, strangers giving her generic compliments that sound like they were copy-pasted from a template. All of it gets filtered, processed, and erased. Her brain is ruthlessly efficient. It has to be. So it only keeps the memories that made her feel something unexpected, something vivid, something that breaks the usual pattern. The men who understand this don't try harder. They communicate differently. They've learned to speak in a way that creates what neuroscientists call emotional salience. That's just a fancy term for making your presence impossible to ignore and even harder to forget. Most guys operate under a flawed assumption. They think that playing it safe and staying polite is the smart move. They believe that as long as they don't mess up or say the wrong thing, they'll gradually build attraction over time. But safety is the enemy of memory. Your brain is designed to ignore safe. It's built to detect novelty, contrast, and anything that disrupts the baseline. Think about your own life. You don't remember the 100 peaceful commutes you had last year. You remember the one morning your tire blew out on the highway. You don't remember every meal you've ever eaten. You remember the dinner where someone proposed or the night you laughed so hard you couldn't breathe. Memory favors the unexpected. And if you want to be remembered, you have to be willing to color outside the lines just enough to wake her brain up. This doesn't mean being loud or obnoxious or trying to shock her with edgy jokes. It means something far more subtle and far more powerful. It means learning to communicate in layers. Most people speak in a single flat dimension. They say things that are factually accurate but emotionally empty. Yes, the weather is nice. Yes, that movie was fun. Yes, work has been busy. These statements don't activate anything in the listener's brain. There's no texture, no depth, no reason for her neurons to light up and say this matters, save this. But when you add layers to your communication, everything shifts. You're not just exchanging information, you're creating an experience, and experiences are what the brain holds on to. Let me give you an example. Two men are on a date with the same woman. The first guy says he likes her smile. She says thank you. He smiles back. The moment passes. It's pleasant but forgettable. The second guy waits until she's laughing at something unexpected. And then he pauses, looks at her with complete presence, and says something like this. You know what I noticed about you? You laugh with your whole face. Most people just move their mouth, but you actually let yourself feel it. That's rare. Now think about what just happened in her brain. He didn't just give her a compliment. He gave her a mirror. He showed her that he's paying attention to the details most people miss. He anchored a positive emotion, her laughter, to his observation, and he did it with specificity. This is layered communication, and it doesn't get deleted. The difference between these two men isn't charisma. It's not confidence in the traditional sense, it's awareness. A second man understands that the brain craves specificity. Vague compliments feel like noise, but specific observations feel like proof that someone is truly seeing you. And being seen is one of the deepest human needs we have. When you meet that need, even briefly, you create a psychological bookmark. She might not consciously realize why she keeps thinking about you later that night, but her subconscious knows. You made her feel understood, and that feeling is magnetic. Here's another truth that most men don't realize. Attraction isn't built during the conversation. It's built after. When she's alone, replaying the interaction in her mind, that's when the real work happens. If your words were generic, there's nothing to replay. The memory fades like steam. But if you said something that landed with weight, her brain will loop it. She'll think about the way you paused before you spoke, the way your tone shifted when you said something sincere, the way you didn't rush to fill the silence. All of these subtle choices feed into the post-conversation replay, and that replay is where attraction deepens. This is why trying to be perfect in the moment often backfires. Perfection is smooth and polished and completely forgettable. What sticks is authenticity. The moments where you let your guard down just enough to be real. So how do you actually do this? How do you speak in a way that creates these emotional snapshots without sounding rehearsed or manipulative? It starts with slowing down. Most people talk at the speed of anxiety. They're so worried about what to say next that they're barely present for what's happening now. But memory formation requires presence. When you slow your speech just slightly, when you allow pauses to exist without panicking, you signal to her brain that you're comfortable. Comfort is contagious. And when she feels comfortable, she opens up. That openness is the gateway to real connection. Next, you have to get comfortable with being direct. Not aggressive, not pushy, just clear, indirect communication feels like a game, and games are exhausting. When you say what you actually mean without wrapping it in 10 layers of politeness, you create clarity. And clarity feels like fresh air. Imagine she mentions she's never been to a certain restaurant. Most guys would say, "Oh, that place is great. You should check it out sometime." That's passive, that's safe, that's forgettable. A man who understands directness would say, "I've been wanting to go back there. Let's go this week." See the difference? One is a suggestion floating in the air. The other is an invitation with intent. Intent creates momentum, and momentum is emotionally engaging. But here's where a lot of men get it wrong. They think being direct means being demanding or coming on too strong. That's not it at all. Directness without respect is aggression. Directness with respect is leadership. And leadership, when done with care, is deeply attractive. It removes the burden of uncertainty. She doesn't have to guess what you want or read between the lines or decode your intentions. You've made it easy, you've been honest. And honesty, especially in a world full of half-truths and mixed signals, is unforgettable. Let's talk about validation for a moment because this is where most men completely miss the mark. They think validation means compliments. So they pile on praise about her looks, her outfit, her hair, and while there's nothing wrong with noticing those things, they don't create lasting impact. Why? Because she's heard it before. 100 times. From strangers, from exes, from guys who barely know her name. Surface level compliments don't validate her, they validate her appearance. And deep down, she knows that appearance can fade, change, or be replicated. What she truly craves is to be valued for something deeper, for the parts of herself that she's intentionally built. Her sense of humor, her way of thinking, her resilience, her kindness. When you validate those qualities, you're speaking to her identity, and identity-based validation creates powerful emotional anchors. It tells her that you're not just attracted to what you see, you're drawn to who she is. Let me show you what this looks like in practice. Instead of saying "you're so smart," which is shallow and vague, you could say something like, "I love how you connect ideas that seem completely unrelated." It's like your brain makes shortcuts the rest of us don't even see. That's specific, that's observational, that's proof you've been listening, and it validates something she's probably proud of but rarely gets acknowledged for. Here's another layer. The best communicators understand the power of contrast. Contrast is what makes things stand out. If you're always high energy, your high energy becomes the baseline and loses impact. If you're always serious, seriousness becomes noise. But when you shift between energy levels intentionally, you create emotional texture. Maybe you're playful and teasing for most of the conversation, but then you pause, your tone drops, and you say something sincere. That shift creates a spike in her attention. Her brain notices the change, and because change signals importance, she'll remember that moment far more than anything else you said. Timing matters too. A lot of guys think they need to fill every silence, so they talk just to talk. But silence is where meaning lives. When you say something important and then let it breathe, you give her brain time to absorb it. You're not rushing to the next topic. You're not diluting the moment with filler. You're letting the weight of your words settle. That kind of restraint communicates confidence. It shows that you trust what you said enough to let it stand on its own. And that trust makes the message more believable. Now, I want to address something that might make you uncomfortable. You cannot fake this. You can learn the mechanics, sure. You can practice pausing, being specific, speaking with intent. But if you're doing it as a technique to manipulate someone into liking you, it will backfire. People can sense inauthenticity even if they can't name it. It shows up in micro expressions, in vocal tension, in the eyes. The only way this actually works is if you genuinely care about understanding the person in front of you. If you're truly curious, If you actually want to see her, not just be seen by her, when that's your foundation, everything else flows naturally. Let me tell you what happens when you get this right. You'll notice a shift in how people respond to you. Conversations will last longer. She'll ask you more questions. She'll lean in. She'll text you first. Not because you tricked her or played a game, but because you made her feel something rare. You made her feel like she matters. Not as a conquest or a prize, but as a human being worth knowing. And in a world where everyone is half present, distracted by screens and shallow interactions, that kind of attention is almost revolutionary. But here's the part nobody talks about. This approach requires you to be okay with the outcome either way. If you show up with full presence and authenticity and she's not interested, that's fine. It doesn't mean you failed, it means you were honest and the connection wasn't aligned. A man who's truly confident doesn't need every woman to be attracted to him. He just needs to know that when he shows up, he's showing up as himself. That self-assurance is the final piece of the puzzle. Because when you're not desperate for a specific result, you stop performing. And when you stop performing, you start connecting. So here's my challenge to you. The next time you're talking to someone you're interested in, forget about trying to impress her. Forget about saying the right thing. Instead, focus entirely on noticing her. What does she light up talking about? What makes her laugh? What does she value? What small details does she reveal without realizing it? Listen like you're studying a language you've never heard before. And when something strikes you as genuine or beautiful or interesting, tell her. Not with a script, not with a formula, just with honesty. That simple shift will change everything. Your words have more power than you realize. Not because of what you say, but because of how you make people feel when you say it. Most men waste that power on empty phrases and safe conversation. But you don't have to be most men. You can choose to communicate with intention, to be present, to be specific, to be real. And when you do, you won't just be another face she forgets. You'll be the person her brain refuses to let go of. Not because you were perfect, but because you were unforgettable. If this perspective shifted something in you, let me know by dropping a like. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. And if you've got a story about a conversation that stayed with you long after it ended, I'd love to hear it in the comments. Let's build a space where real connection matters more than cheap tricks. Thanks for watching. Stay intentional.